Donald Trump just had a speech in an event that he called Fighting Anti-Semitism with some of the Zionist community in the United States. Now, he made a couple of statements that I wanted to speak about, in particular when it comes to the expansion of Israel. But before that, I wanted to point out the term. They're still using the term fighting anti-Semitism when everything is linked to Israel. And this term is a very misinterpreted term that was there with the beginning and the rise of Zionism to link the Jewish people to an ethnicity rather than a religion, and then criminalize the criticism of the state because it's as if you're criticizing the religion. When it comes to Semitism, whether you take it from the descendants of Sam, or if you take it from the perspective of the natives of Asham, the Levant area, these people who established the state of Israel have no link to these people or to these region. And even if they do, they took the term anti-Semitism itself and are only excluding it to part of them, even without including the majority of the Semitic people. Therefore, the term that should be used when it comes to speaking against anti-Judaism, for example, is anti-Judaism. Someone who has a racist tone or has any racism against the Jewish people is a person who is anti-Jewish. And again, Donald Trump is still selling this notion of anti-Semitism, linking it to Israel as a state, although the weaponization reached higher levels recently, and the fact that anti-Semitism, as it's defined by IHRA, it already includes Israel in 7 out of its 14 clauses. So you're talking about a weaponized term that is only being used as a scare tactic for people to not criticize Israel and therefore label them as anti-Semites when they want to criticize Israel. I had to have this introduction because it's important, and I wanted to elaborate further when it comes to Donald Trump. The funny thing is, although he was saying, he is fighting anti-Semitism and trying to appeal to the Zionist lobby, of course, and he was talking about Jewish people in general. In his speech, he said that not all Jewish people support Israel, and he was criticizing the New York Times and how some Jewish people are like against the Jews, right? Again, exclusivity, right? But one important thing that he said is the fact that Israel is a tiny state. And I wanted to share this clip quickly.
When you look at the odds, when you look at the map, a map of the Middle East, Israel is a tiny little spot compared to these giant land masses. It's really a tiny spot. I actually said, is there any way of getting more? It's so tiny. It just doesn't look. It's amazing how it can.
Let's repeat that 1 second here.
It's really a tiny spot. I actually said, is there any way of getting more? It's so tiny.
Is there any way of getting what exactly, Mr. Trump? Do you expand Israel? I wanted to share this with you because Donald Trump, during his term, he did many favors for Israel that none of the previous US presidents did. One of them was moving the embassy to Jerusalem. None of the US presidents agreed to that. Recognizing Israel's legitimacy over the Golan Heights, no one did that before. And then he sponsored these deals with some of the Arab regimes against the Palestinian people, disregarding the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause. And now he's getting funded heavily by the Zionist lobby to go and have these speeches and appeal to them and follow their rhetoric as well. He's again playing the same rhetoric with Iran, and he's talking about this extremism, anyone who opposes Israel, clearly showing that when it comes to Israel, Donald Trump, not only that he's no different than Kamala Harris, he's potentially worse than Kamala Harris. And this remark, when it comes to is there any way of, that could hint to Donald Trump actually wanting to look at a greater Israel. And we had talks about potential occupation of Sinai. We have talks about Israel declaring full authority on the West Bank and Gaza, and considering them a part of Israel, although de facto Israel is in both of them now. And we have ministers in the Israeli government who actually push for the occupation of Sinai. And Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister himself, in some of his recent speeches, he had the Greater Israel flag with him that included parts of Jordan and the Sinai Peninsula as well. So will Donald Trump, firstly, if he does become president, continue with the same pattern that he had with Israel, or will we already be in a stage where there's a regional and potentially global war that will take all of these plans down the drain?